So my name is Peter Buhl Jensen, for you who have not met me before. Oncology Venture is, you can say, built around a technology to identify who will actually benefit from a cancer product. And this is, I think, a very important part of drug development. I'm a medical oncologist and have worked for several years in oncology, and very often we give medicines to patients where it may only work in one patient out of 4. 25% is what happens sometimes. I met Sten Knudsen in my previous company, Target, where he correctly predicted how we should use one of our products, belinostat, and have worked with him since 2011, and a number of response predictions has been possible based on his very important technology. So it's really, I think, I feel very fortunate that I've met Sten Knudsen and met his technology, and can see that it's basically a more complex view on cancer, that we put more information into who are we going to treat. A disclaimer here, we are a listed company, and what we all know is that a lot of the products that we treat our patients with are not very active, but some of them are, you can say, more successful than others. In depression, it's quite a lot of the products that actually live up to the quality criteria. But when we go down to cancer, it's basically in 75% of the cases, the product is not really benefiting the patient. This is what we're used to. It's sort of hard to treat cancer patients, but this is what we see. We also see that you can say, if we have a product approved in cancer, we can expect that the price is going to be more than $10,000 per patient per month. And we know that we can have products approved with a only 25% response rate. We had our belinostat approved with a 25% response rate in my previous company. On the other hand, there is a lot of compounds in development that never are approved. So you can say there's only 2.5% of the products that are in patients that end up being approved to cancer patients. If we can identify, many of those products are probably very good, but they're just not effective enough. And so you can say safety is okay, but some patients, too few patients benefit. And this is where Knudsen's, you can say, algorithms, where we can look at the biopsies and identify the match with the product and the patient. And this is what we do in oncology. So we have this technology to identify the responders. So it's really you can say, an algorithm. Today we can almost call it artificial intelligence, but I mean the background is definitely Sten Knudsen's brain and his work in really, you can say, deciphering. He's an engineer and a professor at the Danish MIT, and I think it was, for me, being a doctor, we're used to sort of accepting that we don't understand all the complexities. Sten Knudsen came with a completely other view and say, we have so much information that if I put that into my computers and my algorithm, I will be able to identify who will respond. Basically, it sounded too good to be true, but I can tell you it really works in many patients. That means that we can have, you can say, much more focused studies, and we need fewer patients in our clinical trials to registrate, and of course also see improved outcomes in the patients. So it is really, you can say, about, instead of treating everybody, instead of treating all, you want to treat the patients that are most sensitive to your product, and this will give you a high average efficacy. It sounds simple, and it is actually not very complex. It's a simple model where we can look into the patient's biopsy. So this is from a patient with breast cancer, that the tumor is put into formalin and then put into such a paraffin block. And then you can slice it, and we can measure in a technology here, we can measure how is the gene actually, how does it look? What is the cancer? How is it operating? And we can match how this cancer is operating to treatment. So we're using lots of variables. It's not really. You could say the genome. It's more the phenotype. How is the cancer actually operating? But we use 20,000 genes, how they actually are operating, and how that matches to the product. So we basically said, okay, let's go out and find products where our technology is able to identify the responders, and we would like to in-license those products. And then you could say develop those products with our response prediction. So look in the patient's biopsy before you treat the patients, and then you can look in several biopsies but only treat few patients using our DRP, and then basically we see lots of value inflection points for shareholder value. We have now, you can say we've looked, we have a team who's been looking, and we have now 7 products in our pipeline, and there are several products out there also. We've only taken products in that they've all demonstrated activity in cancer patients. That means that we can see the tumor shrinks in patients. This is a product, this is a request for us to buy the product into our pipeline. However, we can also see that our DRP is able to identify who should have the product and who should not. And this is where we are now. And we are now, you can say, we have 2 major products that are now approaching a situation where we can definitely find a partner, but also where we can see how can these products actually be approved in the US and in Europe. So there's Liplacis, which is a product that we've been announcing to you several times before, but it's developing very fine. And then the new one in the block is dovitinib, which we got from Novartis. It's a thing that we didn't anticipate when we started the company in 2015, that we would actually have such very, very mature products that has been very, very close to being approved. So this product, dovitinib, has shown activity completely similar to a competing product, sorafenib, which is sold for $1 billion annually. Completely identical. And that means that Novartis could actually have this dovitinib approved as a non-inferior, meaning it's not less good than sorafenib, and it can be approved on that threshold in the US. But Novartis did not want to have the product approved as a non-inferior product. They basically want to be superior, and they said, maybe you have a superior technology who can identify who responds. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about, that we have now looked into 5 of those studies that Novartis did, 5 of those studies where they had biopsies, and we could look into those biopsies and we could see who responded in all 5 different. So it gives us, you can say, an opportunity to run clinical trials without even running them. We can just look at the biopsies from the patients and identify who will benefit. So this is really the new opportunity with dovitinib. So you can say what we look for is we're looking for, you can say, products that are competitively challenged, but clinically successful. They need to work in the patients. And then we can get them to superiority by using the DRP. We can look for, you can say, smaller targeted trials where we don't include so many patients as our competitors, and also having a sort of an opportunity for approval in fewer patients, basically because the results gets better. So selection of patients for treatment based on their, you can say, their cancer gene expression signature, and giving us the highest likelihood of effect. And also, you can say by that, we are avoiding treating patients, and we are avoiding treating patients that will not have any benefit. So the toxicity of those compounds are only for those patients that will benefit, and gives us an efficient health economics with higher probability of you can say, effective treatment and lower safety issues. Company, we were formed in 2004, actually Sten Knudsen formed MPI in 2004, Oncology Venture was formed in 2012. We had Oncology Venture listed in 2015. We merged the 2 companies in 2018 to get, you can say, full access to both the drug development part and the response prediction that Sten Knudsen had invented. So Sten Knudsen invented this whole technology back in 2004 and has basically worked on that for 15 years before we are now, you could say, ready to use it in patients, and we can see that it works in practice. I'm very proud about the team. We have a very impressive team with, you can say, 33 patented inventions in our team, 60 out-licensing deals, 13 successful trade sales, and 17 products launched. We need to have experts both on the product, but also on the response prediction, that you could say the biomarker work, and this is what we have in our team. So I think it's important here to come with a little story about myself and my wife, Ulla. We had invested into Genmab, and I think this is something that Peter also wants to discuss, is why invest in biotech? And of course it is that you see this happening. Genmab is now trading at 1,200 Danish kroner. And Ulla and I, we got tired of Genmab at this time point and sold, I think we sold at 38 kroner. And I mean, this is sometimes how biotech is. And I now want to show you how Oncology Venture looks. And this is also, I see, a rather sad story. Or what you say is that it could be very strong. Here we see what happened back in 2016. Very early after our inception in 2015, when Oncology Venture was created, we made a deal with Cadila, and it had an amazing effect on the share price. So it went up to 70. Then you can say we haven't seen any progress in the Cadila deal. There's been disappointments. We've been out raising money, and we've seen you could say, a situation with the share price going down. Then we can say what's happened since is, okay, we've got very strong data with Lipsys. We got very strong data that Dovitinib works. So basically we did the Lipsys ourselves. And now the thing is, when will the deal happen? And that's a good question. I know that you'll always ask me this question. And I promised a deal in 2018 because I thought we had very mature data. Of course it's maturing, and it's now even more mature. So I want to show you how you can see this situation from where we was founded in 2015. We had two products, irofulven and apoten. And basically it took us until 2018 before we had the first patient in irofulven, because we had to do everything ourselves. So we had to get the stuff manufactured, we had to move it all forward, and we just started in 2018 with those patients. Then we got products in, as you see, we got products in all the way up here. And the last products that we got is a PARP inhibitor that is, you could say, from Eisai, a product that has been developed by Eisai, ready to move forward, but they don't think that they had the competitive edge, and that's why we got that product. Then we got Dovitinib from Novartis, and Dovitinib is, sorry about this, but this is basically where we have a lot of hope now that Dovitinib is going to be approvable based on the existing data. Lipsys is the same, that we have very good data with this product as well. And then we have 3 other products where we see this, you could say dark horses or whatever we call it. These products, we don't know, the verdict is still out, but they may pan out very successful. We now have patients in irofulven. We have patients treated with our PARP inhibitor, both in Denmark, in breast cancer. We've now also started in ovarian cancer in the US. And we just got this Exempra in, and as I announced in January, this is a product that is approved in the US and is not approved in Europe. And basically it needs, you could say, a little lift, and this is what we can give. We can raise this to success. This is what we believe. We're not moving this forward before we see investments into this particular setting. But the other things is what we're moving. We are moving Dovitinib, aiming to discuss with the FDA, how can we have it approved? And the fact is, of course, that the reason we think we can have it approved is that it is, you can say, approvable on a non-inferiority basis in renal cancer. And then we've looked at 5 different indications here with Dovitinib, where we looked at biopsies that Novartis kept from their studies, understanding, of course, that this can be a very valuable tool for drug development in the future. And when we looked at those biopsies, we were able to see in renal cancer, in liver cancer, in breast cancer, in lung cancer, and in endometrial cancer, that we could identify the cancer patients that benefited from the product. We're using a more complex algorithm than Novartis was using. They were aiming for a specific fibroblast-like growth factor, that this was the thing that would be changing the equilibrium. We have used a much more complex. We're using 70 genes for this program. We're using for this product here, the PARP inhibitor, we're using 400 14 genes. So it's very complex models. We have sent this to the FDA to hear their, not approval, but what would be their reaction to a 414 gene. And it's clear that you could say the world is anticipating that we have to get more complexity into our algorithms. So it's artificial intelligence, it's big data, and here we can lean on Sten Knudsen's work going back to 2004. This is why we have this opportunity today. So this is the pipeline. These are the products that we are working on. Irofulven, as you know, was one of the first products, and we are now in prostate cancer patients, looking forward to see those patients responding, hopefully. And this product is in ovarian cancer, just started there, and then we have the excellent data in those two products up here. Dovitinib is, this is obviously a product that works. This is a Novartis compound, and here you see how it looked when it was used in a patient with a GIST tumor who was resistant to two other, imatinib and sunitinib. And what you see, this is before the patient is treated, and here is afterwards. And this is actually, this black here is the kidneys. It should be there, it's the bladder, and we have something from the heart and the brain. This is okay. There is a little bit too blackening here, but it looks completely much, much better than here. It's a product that works, and we now know who should have it. Novartis was not able to get any, you could say, superiority out of it. This is what our technology can do. So what we have is, you can say, a time-efficient development of, you can say, next generation oncology treatment. We have, with this high likelihood of response, we have the opportunity for expedited EU and US approvals. If we're getting those response rates, and this is what we're seeing, and of course, with pivotal trials, we don't need thousands of patients. We can have those products approved with much fewer patients. So you can say, how do we, basically what is that we're doing? And we are looking for products. Generally, I've talked to you about that. And then we are aiming for commercialization. And we now have entered into a collaboration with Destum Partners. They are helping us to sell. It's an American sales organization. And they are helping us to sell the Liplacis and the Dovitinib. And you can say, how does those sales look? It's an out-licensing to pharma. It's sale of the product. It can be a joint venture, and it can be, we could keep some of the commercialization in-house. When we are selling, it's giving upfront payments, milestone payments, and royalties. We have a lot of endorsement also from the scientific community. This is an overview we published a couple of 1 month ago, and basically saying that it's a drug response predictor for treatment of breast cancer. And knowing the target is only part of the solution. Basically, this is you can say, a discussion of the technology. If we can say the Liplacis, the content in Liplacis is this product, cisplatin. And we have known cisplatin for 50 years. And basically what we were able to demonstrate was that we can see who will benefit from cisplatin. And we looked at 2 different lung cancer patient populations, and were able to demonstrate this and publish this last year. And I can show you here what it's all about. This is patients with lung cancer who have been operated. So they all go through surgery. So basically the surgeon says, I don't think there's any more tumor here. But we know from, you can say, reality that very often there may be tumor cells. So those patients, they receive chemotherapy after the surgery, what we called adjuvant chemotherapy. And the patients get cisplatin and vinorelbine in the adjuvant setting. If we look at the biopsies, we can predict how is actually the DRP for those patients looking. And then when we look at how is the outcome of the patients, how many patients are cured depending on the cisplatin sensitivity, and this is what you see here. So this is where we came from before, because if you don't know what you look for, you give all the patients this treatment. Now you know that if you are not sensitive to this product, you should probably have something else. Down here, it's only half of the patients that survive. Up here, where they're in the top 10, we see that 90% of the patients survive. So you can look into the biopsies and predict the future risk of the patient. And this is, of course, what we use in our Liplacis. So we we can identify the patients who will benefit from this cisplatin. We we have this product Liplacis, which is a new formulation of cisplatinum, and we treat the top 1/5 of the patients with this product. And this is basically giving us a very high response rate. We see patients responding that did not respond before. They have had previous several therapies, and now we have a treatment option for those patients. So this is, you can say, how we see the development of our company. We take those products forward, and the two most advanced are the Dovitinib and Liplacis. Dovitinib, where we can actually, you can say, only look into biopsies. We see this also as future developments. Within the last 2 years, we've started seeing products from Big Pharma. And of course, if we're getting products from Big Pharma with biopsies, we can move the company forward without having to do our clinical trials ourselves. So Dovitinib may be the first example of where we don't have to do any clinical trials, or only have to do a very limited clinical trial using the DRP together with the approval opportunity that we have with non-inferior in renal cancer. So this is what we'll discuss with the FDA. So we see quite a lot of readouts. You have to think about that this is, of course, costly to do clinical trials, but it's also obvious that if irofulven does not show good results in the first 10 patients, we don't do anything more, because we've selected, in irofulven, we've selected the top 20% of the patients based on our technology, and if that doesn't give us a 50% response rate or something similar, we are not interested. So that's the background of Oncology Venture.
Thank you, Peter. Very, very interesting. I have a lot of questions for you. First one, just to understand. So once you have your, when it comes to the doctor treating the patient ultimately, how will the doctor know whether this specific patient will actually respond to your medicine?
No, that's a good question. You saw that the biopsy, so we need to have the biopsy to the lab, and or some slices from the biopsy. This is the same as what you do with several other products, that you have a biomarker, and you send it to the lab, the pathology lab, and then you do analysis and see what mutations are there, or with us, how does the DRP look? And then the patient gets a response, or gets the answer that there is, you are in top 20, and you are likely to respond.
Yeah.
And then the doctor and the patient decides whether she should go into this, should have this product or something competing.
The second thing I would like to ask, you had a very nice share price chart. One was very nice and the one not so nice. Tell me, right now you have just completed a financing round. Please give us a summary of how much money have you raised? What are you going to use this money for? I think those two must be the first questions.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So we raised 80 million Swedish krona, 81 million Swedish krona, and we are, you can say, I think it should be clear that we are aiming for the two major things, that is discussing with the FDA on the Dovitinib, using the data that we have from 5 clinical trials, and basically see what kind of requirements do we see from the FDA and the EMA, the European counterpart, to what is required for approval. So you must think about that there are 4 products out there very similar to Dovitinib that is selling $1 billion annually. And there's no guidance in who will benefit from this product and this product and this product. Here we come with a completely new aspect, with a product that we can have approved, and we can say we would like to treat the top 1/3. And compared to all the other products, we'll be able to demonstrate this beats the competitors. It's a very clear thing. And you could say, how is FDA and EMA looking at those things? It's also doctors. Some of those people, they've also been sitting with patients and understand that this is all about response rate, I mean, if we have to choose, and I'll now cite Niels Brunner, who's down there, if we have to choose between two products, and one has a 30% response rate and the other one has I will almost say 28% response rate, we'll almost all take the 30. So, and we can do it much better. So I think this is the competitive edge we have to the product, is we can get a very compelling response rate. We've got that with Liplacis, and we got that with Dovitinib, and we expect to be able to put a lot of other products through this, you can say, machinery.
Okay. And for one of your main products, Dovitinib, when do you expect you will be able to submit an NDA to FDA on that one?
That's a nice question.
Yeah.
So we need to know what the FDA says to the DRP, because what we would like to discuss with the FDA is to say, here we have the data which will give us non-inferiority approval. We are not aiming for that. Is it possible to use those data and use the DRP data that we have and getting an approval here? Is it possible to get an approval as is? Would it be an approval conditional on us doing some clinical trials? Or will they say, well, you need to do 100 patients and demonstrate that this is correct? That's not for me to predict right now, but there is clearly a likelihood that we have a technology that worked in 5 different clinical trials. So what we see is that this is really linked to Dovitinib. It's not even linked to the cancer type. So you can say that we, of course, hope not only to go into renal, but that we will be able to encapsulate, you can say, patients from all types of cancers that have particular this signature in their cancer. They'll benefit from the Dovitinib. This is happening with some other products right now. There is a couple of products that has been approved based on not where the cancer comes from, but how the cancer is actually operating. Because of course, sometimes you may have a breast cancer that is really operating more like a kidney cancer. And we don't see it because the pathologist is only looking into it, say it's a breast cancer. How do we see it? You've got to have more complexity into it. But I think that the first thing is to have, you can say, a discussion with the FDA, a discussion with EMA, and say, how do you view these things? Because we think it's remarkable. We hope that they agree with us on this.
And let's assume that that's fine, great, give it to us. Then what's the time frame?
Everything plain vanilla, and then we'll have the approved in 1 year.
Okay, good. Overall,
everything plain vanilla. I said that.
I heard that.
Please,
yeah, it's good.
Because it's going to be, of course, there can be lots of thresholds.
Yeah. You have 7.
I think one of the good things about Dovitinib is that it's actually been in 2,500 patients. So we have a lot of data on the safety of this product. We know very much about the product. And we also have, the manufacturing, all these things are in place. In fact, we actually have 1,900 kilos of Dovitinib not at our facility, but at a local storage. So if any of you need some Dovitinib, you feel free to contact me. We do have a lot. So I think that you could say from that perspective, we are ready to in a way, Novartis was ready to launch this product. They didn't produce 1.9 tons if they didn't think that it was a product that would be selling tomorrow.
As a shareholder here today, I think a lot will wonder, now may be the right time to go into your stock and invest. 2 questions. First of all, tell us about your product portfolio and try to give us an order of what are where you have the highest expectations, so to speak.
I think we have APO10 is probably at the bottom. It's a high-risk project that is developing quite slowly. If we take Arafulven, it took us a long time to manufacture. We're now into prostate cancer. We don't have any biopsies where we can demonstrate that it works. So it's really in treating the patients.
If you take the top 3.
So now you ask me to come with all of them. So I'll tell you and then we have a liposomal doxorubicin where we are waiting for manufacture. It's something also for the future. The top 3 is definitely the Dovitinib compound. We may not have to do any more clinical trials. With the Liplacis, we've seen amazingly results in both response rate and also how long the patient have benefit of the product compared to the already approved products, so that's definitely also a very important thing. The PARP inhibitor, there is a PARP race going on, and the thing is that it's difficult to identify who benefits from this product. So there are some mutations that patients, if they have a BRCA mutation, they're more likely to respond, but I think we've got more into our, you can say, basket. So that's the 3 ones.
And the very last question, because we're running out of time. If you are to give your 10 cents on why an investor should invest in you, in Oncology Venture, what are the main reasons for that?
I think what we have is the first example of a company that is embracing complexity of cancer into algorithms, and that can be used not only for product development, also for personal response prediction in cancer patients. And we see in the future also that we will be benefiting with this technology from oncology companies that wants to work with us, where we don't have to do the trials.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay.